Is email dead?
It's far from dead, for a start.
Isn't it just like, I don't know, a bunch of pretty words put together in cute sentences?
That's a big misconception.
I want to use Reddit because I don't want to get people respond slowly. It takes forever to get interviews.
My favorite place to turn to is Reddit. It's voice of customer. You just get to the core emotions, which is kind of right back to that buyer psychology, and that's why it's great. Reddit is just a gold mine for that stuff.
Welcome to the 100K podcast, where we discuss hyper-practical tools to start and grow a purpose-driven lifestyle business from 0 to 100K in yearly profits as a solopreneur and without external investment. So today we're going to have an episode here about a skill that's very crucial to learn at the beginning. Starting out as a solopreneur without investment, you're likely to do a lot of the work yourself. And one of the most, if not the most important skill of that is copywriting. So today we have here, of course, my co-founder of Meta Startup Studio, Olga, as a co-host. And then a very special guest today. I don't want to fuck up the intro. So basically we're here with Chris. You can find him on LinkedIn as CJ Haughey, Haughey. He's been a copywriter since 2017 and has worked with tech giants including IBM, Slack, Hotjar, however you pronounce that. And nowadays he works mainly as a copywriting consultant and email marketer for businesses in the wealth and health niches. So welcome, Chris. Thank you for being here. Is there anything you want to add to that, or did that kind of capture that correctly?
I think you pretty much nailed it. My name's CJ Haughey.
Haughey. Oh, damn. Sorry, bro.
It's a minor thing.
Haughey.
Just a little minus behind your name.
The way I explain it to a lot of people, because it's tricky for people to pronounce an Irish surname, is like, just think of the noise a donkey would make if it was going in reverse.
That's not an easy way to tell.
Yeah, instead of hee-haw, it's Haughey. Yeah. Cool. No, thank you very much for the introduction, and I'm glad to be here. Thanks for inviting me on.
Awesome. So let's dive in. So Chris, explain us why copywriting is such a crucial skill for new business owners. Isn't it just like, I don't know, a bunch of pretty words put together in cute sentences?
That's a big misconception.
What?
Yeah. So it's, I guess, the simplest way to explain it, the simplest definition that I like, is copywriting is sales in print. So anything you see, whether it's online or offline, from a website to a YouTube ad to a billboard, whatever it is, if it's text and it's trying to sell you something, that's copywriting, sales in print. And a lot of people do get into it thinking it's creative writing or it's storytelling, and that does draw a lot of people into it. There's been, over the last few years, a huge flood of new copywriters into the market, especially since COVID, everybody went remote. A lot of people shifted careers, and they thought, hey, I was really good at English at school and I liked writing essays. I'm going to give copywriting a shot. And there is this perception that it's got this low barrier to entry, and it's kind of like get rich quick almost. There's a lot of people feel that that's what it is.
It's sales in print, right?
It
Printing money.
Print. Exactly. Yeah, that's it. But they will soon discover then that the reality is that writing is actually just really just the surface of it. Underneath, copyright is actually more psychology. I would say, probably 80% buyer psychology. That's what it is. That's what anybody who's been in sales will understand, that it's much more about the psychology of trying to get to know your prospect and understand them, and then try to sell them. So there's that joke that goes around, all marketers are like sociopaths, there's
a little bit
of manipulation involved, but that's what it is in its essence. It's buyer psychology.
If you're manipulating for a good cause, helping people make a decision to help themselves, that's a great sociopath.
Yeah, I mean, if your intentions are true, if it's genuine, you've got a good offer, it's truly going to help someone better their life, then it's okay. But there's a lot of scammy stuff out there as well when it comes to copyright.
Of course, which gives actually a lot of bad reputation to sales, and that's why people are usually, that at least from like people we engage with a lot who are just entering this world of like putting themselves out there, selling themselves and their products for the first time. It's a big barrier to like, I don't want to sell. I'm not good at selling. I don't like selling, you know? So I guess that's definitely where it comes from.
Yeah, definitely. I totally agree. I mean, when I was younger, early 20s, I worked in like call centers, for like credit card companies, and like on the phone, trying to make sales for a commission and stuff, and I hated it. Like I'd tense up. I'm not a big public speaker, and then the pressure of like trying to sell to someone over the phone or something, I just felt like it wasn't me. It didn't come naturally. And I kind of wrote it off. I was like, sales isn't for me. It's just, some people are born to do that. And it's true, you look at something like Wolf of Wall Street and those guys, you'd be like, some people are born to do that kind of sales. But copywriting is quite interesting because then you get to do it just purely by writing, and that's much more interesting to me. It's that intersection of writing and business and psychology, which is a really interesting mix.
So tell us a bit more about the buyer's psychology, because you said it's like 80% it's psychology of the buyer. So what do you mean by that, or what people need to know, maybe kind of like as tips, like when they're writing the copy, what should they have like in mind, like in terms of buyer psychology?
Sure. One of the first things to keep in mind, whatever you're selling, if you're a copywriter, you start working with a client, they've got a product or a service, whatever the offer is. A big kind of pitfall that a lot of newer copywriters go into is they just talk all about the product and its features, and they're banging on about the product and it's so good, it does this, it does that, but it's not really focused on the prospect, the person that you're trying to sell to, and that's the most important thing. You have to keep them in mind, and you have to understand what their reality is, how they think, how they talk, how they feel, and relate your product to that. There is some Harvard study on it. I can remember some guy wrote a book. It was like 95% of purchasing decisions are made subconsciously. And it's because it just really is just more to the emotion and how we're feeling. There's that line, people buy on emotion and then justify with logic later. And we can see this in every day. Like, for example, let's say it's a Friday, you pick the kids up from school, then you go to the supermarket to do the grocery shop, and you go around, you spend half an hour in there going around doing the groceries. You get back into the car park, you put the bags in, the kids are screaming, you're tired, and you're like, I don't want to go home and start cooking now. And you're like, screw that. And you kind of look at each other and you're like, well, we just get like takeout, let's just get a pizza. And it's like, you just spent half an hour and €100 in there buying health foods, but now you're just going to get a pizza. But it's like, it comes from how you're feeling in the moment. It's an emotional reaction. You're like, all right, and then you'll justify it. You'll just be like, yeah, we worked really hard this week, yeah, and we're tired, and we'll get the kids to bed sooner. So then you justify that emotional response. And so copywriting really is that science and art of trying to understand people and where they're at in their life, and then trying to make them that right solution, that right offer at that right time.
So rather than appealing to their brain and their logic, to rather appeal with your copy in a way that it catches the feeling that they desire or want to in that moment. Is that how to think about it?
Yeah, it's it's one of the best copywriters, dead now, but like a legendary copywriter Eugene Schwartz wrote a very famous book back in the 60s, and he came up with this concept of the stages of awareness, the 5 stages. And basically, a lot of people just go straight for the sale, which is like you're dealing with people that are really already aware of everything, the products, the solutions and everything. They know what they want, they're ready to make a decision. But what you really got to do is meet people where they are right now. You got to enter the conversation they're already having in their head about like a problem. If somebody wakes up and they look in the mirror, they see like, oh, I've got like acne or something. They're not like problem aware. That's one of the earlier stages. And so if you're putting out content or sending an email or something, your copy has to relate to where that person is right now. If you're pushing some other kind of agenda, it's not gonna connect with them, and they're probably gonna. It's not going to compel them. They're actually going to be like more deterred and like they don't want to deal with you. So a big part of copywriting is the research that comes before you write anything. And you got to research your market, research your audience, research how they, like I say, how they think and they talk and they feel, and gather that voice of customer up. And then that guide your messaging and makes your copywriting much more effective.
Actually, a super, super important point that you mentioned there, this customer centricity in copywriting and writing and meeting them where they are at, what's going on in their head, how they think, how they feel. So, and you mentioned research here, you mentioned stages of awareness. We're going to get into both of these actually a little bit later in more detail. So just like in terms of like what we've done now so far, just to wrap up kind of like a little mini milestone, what is copywriting, right? It's sales and print, you said. It's got to do a lot with psychology, and maybe just like a couple, like just to wrap up the psychology element, it's about, how does the mind, cognitive behavior, like how does the mind influence actions and behaviors? And that's kind of like understanding the mind and the psychology of the customer to cater your copy accordingly, to get them to move along your funnel or with your brand in the way that you want them to. And in the biopsychology field, there's like emotions over logic, which I think we kind of discussed. You mentioned like people like, the pizza was super like emotional. It was not a logical choice, but then you made it logical afterwards for yourself. But the emotion is kind of the driver. And then there's also social proof I have here on the list: scarcity and urgency, reciprocity, anchoring, loss aversion, cognitive dissonance. So this is like, concepts around people want to follow the actions of others. This is more social proof, right? It gives them more security.
And this is actually like interesting, right? Because urgency, I think, is used quite a lot. So like, what's your take on that? Because like a lot of times, right, like it's known that, human brain kind of operates on scarcity a lot, right? So like we're all scared of scarcity. It's like, oh my God, only 2 spots left. Like only this price, but only today until 5 o'clock, buy it now. Like, what's your point on this? Like, how do you usually use it in your copywriting? How would you recommend people to use like this? Because like we were talking about like manipulation for a good cause, right? So like, what's your point of view on that?
That's the big thing. That's the crux there. So like some of those things, Karsten, that you're listing out, reciprocity and scarcity and social proof. These are some of the big principles of persuasion. There's you may have heard of Dr. Robert Cialdini. He's like probably like the leading authority in the field of biopsychology. He's written a few books, like big tomes. Influence is one of them. It's like the most famous book.
Yeah.
And he goes through, I think there's 6 principles of persuasion. Then the newer version of the book's called 7. And it's these things that you're mentioning here. And he goes through them in great detail. And it's, any copywriter that really truly wants to get in and do this properly for the long term, they should have that book and they should be really understanding this. To your question, Olga, around scarcity specifically, it's a very, very powerful lever in sales. When you tell people, this is going to close in 4 hours, this discount goes away tomorrow, or there's only 3 spots left, it creates that anxiety or that tension in people when they see that, and like, they want, if they want to make that change, because that's what you're selling. Good copywriters aren't really selling a product, they're selling a transformation. They're selling that opportunity to change, to go from pain to pleasure. Or, they're stuck. Oh, sorry about that.
Don't break this mic.
You had one job.
Yeah, how much did that cost? But if generally that's like, you can boil copywriting down. You're either selling like a vitamin or a painkiller, people say, and you're trying to solve a problem, take them from pain to pleasure, or prison to paradise. And so, if you've got a very relevant offer and you've been sending out emails, people's been on your email list or on you're following you on social media, or you're running some kind of campaign or offer, and you've got people interested, and it gets to the end and they're like, this is it, this is the last email, or this closes tomorrow, that scarcity and that urgency can be enough just to compel people to take that leap. And, just like, you're like, can we swear?
Yeah, of course we can.
But yeah, they're basically going to say like, fuck it, I'm in, I wasn't sure,
Oh yeah, they are busy.
Okay. So, but it is important to your point to be using it ethically. There's a lot of people abuse this principle. There's a lot of people use fake urgency. I've seen it even from other big marketers and copywriters with a lot of authority and influence and respect in the industry, but they'll use fake urgency. Like they'll send out emails saying this program closes, and then you go to the sales page and there's a countdown timer and it's like 23 hours left. But I've went in like a week later and you go through the sales page and it's still there. It's like it's fake. It's fake urgency to try and get people to feel tense and to make that leap and buy. And if you abuse that, you're going to lose the trust. And that's the key thing. If your copywriting is really going to work, you're aiming to build up what's known as the KLT factor, to get people to know, like, and trust you. And you got to build that up before people will buy. You know, you're not going to buy anything from anybody if you don't know them or like them or trust them, unless it's something unbelievable. But I don't know what that would be, you know.
Tell us more about this, like, know, like, trust, because like this is still like in the introduction of like what is copywriting. You know, we had the sales and print, we had the psychology element, we gave some examples, so I think it's quite clear now, you know, how copywriting taps into psychology and how important it is to consider that in copywriting. And then, you know, you mentioned the goal is to, you know, build this KLT, this know, like, trust. So what is that really, and like how to think about know, like, trust in general when you think of like, I'm going to copywrite now and I want to do KLT.
Yeah, well, this is
like
funny.
BLT.
BLT. Oh, that sounds tasty. Like in marketing, it's just funny. There's just so many acronyms being thrown around. But the KLT, it's not just hype. You know, it's a simpler way of saying it. It's just really the main thing is you're building rapport. You know, if copywriting is sales in print, you're a salesperson, and like just like a car salesman, you know, you gotta build some rapport with people. And you'll get on their level and connect with them before they're going to start, like, you know, loosening up a bit and really hearing what you have to say and respecting it and considering it, and then eventually buying from you. So when you're doing that, let's say from a personal branding standpoint, you know, if you start out on LinkedIn and you're a nobody, really. I mean, there's like millions of people now on LinkedIn creating content. And it's just there's a lot of noise out there, and there's a lot of copywriters out there. So you have to do something to stand out, and ultimately you got to build that KLT up before people even, you know, if people are scrolling and they just see your name and they don't know you, they just keep scrolling. But the more KLT you have, the more likely people, they won't even just stop because it's a really good hook or headline on your post. They'll just see your name because you're starting to build that KLT. You're starting to build that authority. People are just gravitating towards you, and once you build that up more, then you can really start to command, you know, the kind of clients you want, the kind of, you know, rates you want, you know, and just build your whole brand a lot faster.
So it's about resonating with your audience and gaining trust, so they actually like are willing to give you time and read the stuff you write and look at the stuff you have to say and buy your stuff. But like, what is the role of copywriting in that? Like, how does copywriting create KLT?
It can be done in many ways. Again, just to follow up on the social media aspect of it. When you're starting out, you know, a lot of what you're doing, because it's a personal brand, you'll be sharing a lot about yourself. So you'll be sharing like a lot of personal stories and opinions, and just sharing how you think, how you work, giving like behind the scenes of, you know, your processes, your systems, you know, little mini stories of experiences with past clients. You know, you'll be showcasing wins, different results and stuff. And that's one of the best ways to actually accelerate that KLT. It's another persuasion principle is social proof. And then, you know, building your credibility. And, you know, if you showcase like case studies, you know, hey, I work with this fintech client and we made 5 million, or they got funding, or, you know, this campaign was really successful, and you do a mini case study, that's going to get a lot more, you know, people are going to be like, oh, wow, they're going to take notice of that. So in your copywriting, specifically, like then if you're going into like selling something, like through like an email flow, again, you're trying to build up that rapport with people by getting on their level. You're using that research into the, you know, the emotions and the state where they're at, and building that rapport and getting them really to really trust you.
So this is really interesting, actually, because we get these questions a lot from our clients, for example. Like, because you said, like, in order to build this rapport with people who, for example, following you on social media, right, or like reading your emails, whatever that is, like you need to share like some behind the scenes, like, okay, client cases is clear, but there is also some personal content, right? So that comes with like a personal story. So how much personal is personal enough, you know, because like it's really interesting that you notice sometimes that, you know, it's kind of like my personal opinion that you always need to take people together with you on an emotional roller coaster, because they then like kind of attach themselves to you, right? And they go through different emotions together with you. So my style, for example, of sharing on open media, it would be very, very open. So like it will be very, very vulnerable. But not all people are comfortable with that. So if you want to build this rapport with your audience, like how much of the personal content and what type of personal content can you share?
That's a good question. It's very relevant because LinkedIn, a lot of people go maybe too far with the personal content. They overshare a little bit. A couple of funny examples. Recently, there was one guy who like had the photo of him proposing to his wife on the beach, and it was I can't remember the hook line, but it was like something. Yeah, basically, I proposed. She said yes. Then the next line was, "Here's what it taught me about B2B marketing." And it's like, they were like, everybody's just like, and of course it went super viral. And like since then, everybody's been ripping it with these parody posts, you know, ever since. And there was another guy actually a couple of weeks ago.
So it's actually a good thing. It's like if you get you lots of leads and attention.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, it's good if you want to blow up for that kind of reason, but like. There's other ones. There was the crying CEO from last year. He's like, you didn't know that one? No, it went really viral. When I mean viral, not just social media, like news outlets picked this up. It ran headlines about it. The crying CEO was one last year. He sacked a lot of people. I don't know if it was a couple of hundred people or something. He had to let go. And obviously these people are at home, they had just lost their jobs with their families. They're like, what am I going to do? The next day, they would have been going on LinkedIn. They saw their CEO made this big, you know, sob story about how hard it was for him to let all these people go. And he had a photo of himself crying. And it's like, everybody's like, oh my God, like, what are you doing? Like you're making out you're the victim in this or something. So there's some people kind of take the personal stories a little bit too far. They kind of exploit it a little bit. It's funny in the comments, people are just like, just go to therapy, man. You know, it's like things men will do rather than go to therapy, and it's like post on LinkedIn, you know. But I think it is important though. Still, you're building a personal brand, and you know, even if there's a lot of copywriters that are more experienced than you with 5 years or 10 years in the game, and they've got established communities and a big portfolio, and they've worked with all these big companies, that doesn't mean that it's so saturated that you can't, you know, you can't enter the field, and you can't also carve out a piece of the pie for yourself. It's like you can't just say, oh, well, everybody's done it, they're so far ahead, I'm not going to try. You can still focus on building your personal brand through stories and your experiences that are very unique to you. And build a following around you, because that's what you're building. And at the end of the day, people buy from people.
People connect to people.
And like
yes.
You don't need 100,000 people following you on social media to have a successful business. You know, some people have a small following and an even smaller newsletter list of maybe 1,000 or 2,000 people, and that is enough to give them a really incredible lifestyle, like with a high income. So, you know, you can still build your personal brand, and people who connect with you, like they're very like-minded, they will gravitate towards your content and your copy.
All right. So I think we got a little bit of an insight into know, like, trust, you know, sharing, you know, your personal story, sharing to some extent, you know, watch the space, because like in the case of the CEO, like also again, consider the psychology of everyone else involved who's seeing this, you know, if I got sacked and I'm feeling, you know, and then this other guy who sacked me is like crying about it, it's like it doesn't consider my feelings maybe as a former employee or whatever, you know, that could backfire. So it's really, psychology is so important.
It's back to the customer centricity.
Sociology, psychology.
The big thing you got to keep in mind with social media is you gotta understand like, what kind of picture are you creating. You know, it's nice to have a balance in social media. It can't all be like, you can't always be teaching, you know, here's 5 tips on copywriting, and then the next day, here's 3 frameworks for copying, and the next day, here's how I research. You know, you have to find the balance. If you're just constantly lecturing, and teaching, and that can get stale, and people are, can get bored of that. Similarly, if you're just pushing out, like I love a good meme or a GIF or like a little ranty, sarcastic post maybe on like AI or something. But again, if you're just hammering that nail all the time, people will maybe just be like getting bored of that. And you got to zoom out and just look at the whole canvas of what you're creating, your personal stories, your teaching posts, your humor posts, the things that maybe are personal, a little bit vulnerable, and just make sure that it's well balanced. If you zoom out and just look at that and just like say, what kind of picture am I creating for my personal brand? And if clients or prospective clients and followers look at this, what's the overall impression they're getting? When they zoom out and see like all my content on LinkedIn, am I just the meme guy? Or am I the guy who's always oversharing personal shit? So it's just make sure you have that balance. Otherwise, you're going to maybe convey an impression of yourself, or people are going to get the impression of you that you're somebody else, and maybe it's not somebody they want to know, like, or trust. Maybe it's somebody they just kind of like or laugh at, a funny post once in a while, but it's not somebody they would eventually buy from.
Okay, so let's wrap up the kind of introductory section then with these words. So for one, sales in print is what copywriting is. It's important to consider that, because then for that as well comes the buy-up psychology. It's a psychological exercise in a way to understand what's happening in the minds and feelings and hearts of your customers, so you can appeal to that, so you can use that to guide them ethically to a buying decision. There's also know, like, trust, which is about holistically creating a brand for yourself that people know, like, and trust. Sharing personal, sharing back behind the scenes, also sharing expert, finding that balance between all of that. And that's kind of what copywriting is as like as a definition. This is what is encompassed in. I'm sure there's more that we're missing, but essentially for today, like, this is just the base. Is there anything important that's missing? Let me know. Otherwise, we would go to the next step, which is, I think, the foundations. The foundations of, like, because the first chapter was like the definition, the second chapter is the foundations of successful copywriting. Because now that you understand what copywriting is, you can't just copyright. There's some foundations you need to build first, and that will be kind of the next chapter. But just to make sure, did we cover the definition correctly? Is there something important missing?
The only thing I'd really add is what many people consider to be the golden rule of copywriting, and that's clarity. That when it boils down to at the end, you can use storytelling and you can use analogies and you can use creative wordplay, but it's much more than that, and there's the psychology at the end. It's really, you have to create very clear messaging for the right prospect.
What does that mean?
So it really ties back in. We're going to go into the research phase next, but like, it ties very much into, when you've done all that research and you understand your prospect, you understand your product, and then it's like clearly communicating to that prospect, this is the product you need, this is why you need it, and like, when you can do that successfully, that really clear, crystal clear messaging, it just makes the sale effortless in the end.
Thank you, and I'm glad you bring this up, because I want actually Olga to, because she talked about clarity a lot before.
No, it's just because, like, I think I would never forget, because I think, like, in the beginning when we started our own business and we were like launching our first service, and I was trying to create a sales page for that, and I was like, I feel so stuck with that. So I hired my first copywriting mentor to help me with going through that. And he was like reading through my copy, and like, I would never forget this phrase. He's like, like, you can write well, like, you put well, like, the words into sentences. I don't fucking understand what you're selling. And that's, I think, like, really stuck with me to the question of clarity, right? So, like, being very clear, what is this?
Simple language,
the benefits of it rather than the features, right? And things like that.
Yeah, and you'll see it on so many websites today, especially like SaaS websites, tech websites. They're not known to be great marketers or great copywriters, and you can go to if you went to 10 random SaaS websites, I'd say 7 or 8 of them have really poor, clunky, confusing messaging. When you go to a website, within 10 seconds, you should clearly understand, what is this? What are they offering? Who's it for? Why should I care? What's special about it? Those 4 or 5 questions need to be instantly
in the
obvious.
masthead, in the hero section.
In the hero section, ideally, before you even scroll down, like, right above the fold. And that should be instantly obvious. If it's not, you're going to confuse people. If you confuse them, you lose them, because there's so many competitors out there who will do a better job of communicating what their offer is and why it's valuable. So.
All right, let's create a cut. Authoritative cut of chapter 1, like, what is copywriting? So we wrap that up. Now we really want to get into I really want to get into the foundations, because I'm very excited actually about this section. It's about what to do before you get into actually, doing your content plan and writing your copy. There's some foundations to establish. And there was one element that you already touched on earlier. It's about understanding that there's stages of awareness. What are those stages of awareness? And then there is the element of research that you also briefly mentioned. And doing and understanding those two elements is crucial foundation. So if we can get to like some sort of practical, understanding of what does it mean to understand the different stages of awareness, what does it mean for, how I later write my copy. There's being unaware, the customer is not aware of their problem at all. How do I talk to them? There is the problem aware. They know they have a problem. They don't know how to solve it. There's the solution aware who knows, there's a solution. But maybe, what's your product or service specifically within that solution. Then there is someone who knows about you, but maybe needs some push to, really like understand how are you different than your competition. And then there's those who are ready to buy it. They just need to push. They're the most aware. So, what does this mean for my mix of copywriting? What does this mean for how to think of copywriting to really understand these stages of awareness in your head? Whatever comes to mind first.
Yeah, it's a good question. Like the stages of awareness are critical to keep in mind for any copywriter, because like I mentioned earlier, a lot of people just don't understand that or don't take it into consideration, and then they just go straight for the sale, and it often falls on deaf ears. But when you consider those, like the 5 stages, the first stage is unaware. Typically, you're not going to try and sell to people who are completely unaware, because it's very hard. And some people are just in denial. Maybe they kind of know the problem, but they're just in denial. They don't care. So the next 2 phases, the problem aware and the solution aware, is when they're really discovering that problem, but they need to know more about it. What is the problem, and why is it happening, and how can I fix it? And they're the early stages of like building that trust and building that rapport. In the later stages, then when they're considering different products, product aware, and then most aware, when they're ready to make a buying decision, bringing in all these different concepts, but like it kind of maps to like a funnel, a marketing funnel, and you're just trying to move people down through that. Like, so the later stages are at the bottom of the funnel. To your question of what that means for your content mix, you wouldn't address all of these stages in one piece of content, like one LinkedIn post or one email, or even one blog post. Like you would map like different pieces of content specifically to address people in the different stages. It is possible, like if you're running, let's say, an email campaign and it's 10 emails, you might walk people from, the early stages, from stage 1 or 2, right down through all 5 stages and get them ready to buy. But you do it across 8 or 10 emails, or, depending on the price of the product. If it's like $30, maybe you do it in 3 or 4 emails. If it's $1,000, it's going to be maybe 8 or 10 or 12 emails. If we're looking at through the lens of social media content, again, it's like, say, your Monday to Friday content plan. You can have some posts, your personal stories, the more fun stuff, your opinions, how you work, and that's introducing people to you. You're the solution, and also talking about the problem. So the problem aware and solution aware people. And then later in the week, maybe you're going to have more posts that are more focused a little bit more on the sale, and you're starting to talk more about your offers. Maybe you're sharing a case study. This is what I did for this company. I helped this supplement company increase its email revenue by 20% last month.
Nice.
And, then maybe you'll have a call to action at the end, So you're getting into the people who they're paying more attention to you at that point, and they're most aware, and they're ready to make that buying decision.
Okay.
But it's very much, you map that to your broader campaign.
Okay, so what I'm hearing from there is two things. For one, which makes a lot of sense, it's like it's funnel. You build funnels in the business. You're always going to build funnels at some point.
Right.
You're going to get people to go into your universe, giving you their data for a freebie, whatever. You're going to sell a tripwire entry level type product under €100, and you're going to start selling more your main bigger services, whatever, or products that are behind that. I mean, depends on your product or service industry and whatever. But then, in the beginning, I'll be more about educating them where they at. I'll maybe talk more about, getting them to know their problem and their solution. And then the further I go in the funnel, the more I make it about my final product and helping them make a decision on that product. And that's kind of, that makes sense. That could be emails that connect, from freebie to entry level, from entry level to, it could be other kind of ways of direct messaging that you're engaging in with those people. But then the other one is your general content mix on, social media. In general, I'm posting 7 times a week, or I'm writing in general email newsletter to all of my audience. If I haven't segmented them, for example, I would have a mix there. Some appealing to the ones that are more in education mode, the others more who are basically ready to buy, and I just need to tip them over the fence.
Yeah.
Is that summarizing it correctly?
That's a nice recap. Yeah,
okay.
Nicely rounded up. Yeah.
Awesome. I appreciate that. Okay, so because I'm so excited to go into the next section. So anything you want to add maybe to
No.
awareness?
All good.
Okay, so it's really research as the next thing, and we like, if people follow us already on our social media or podcast, we talk a lot about interviews, about, always doing one-on-one interviews with people, niche down a lot so you can easily find these people, because we talk about solopreneurship without investment. So it needs to be low cost, practical, and the quickest, fastest, cheapest way is if you niche down a lot, because then you can find these people easily. And you talk to even 10, 20, and you already get a red thread of what they're thinking, feeling, if you ask the right questions and you have a certain sensitivity you bring to the interview, so they actually tell you the truth.
Yeah.
But given you do this right and you get these people, that's an amazing foundation then to start copywriting. And we talk about that a lot, and I would love to get your thoughts on this. But then also you talk to me, like every time I talk to you about copywriting, you mentioned Reddit. And I haven't really, I know you started using it a little bit, but like it's very intriguing. What's your strategy on and tools and techniques? And like if I want to research through an interview, okay, we talk about that, please add to that. But then how do I go about it with Reddit? Like if I'm just starting out now, I have something I want to sell, I want to use Reddit because I don't want to get people respond slowly. It takes forever to get interviews. Maybe I've, dried out my network right now with interviews, and instead of doing more interviews, what's an easy way or a good way to use Reddit to do that for me?
Sure.
If you're open to that.
Yeah. No, I'm leaving. Trade secrets. No. Well, just quickly on your point about interviews, like I totally agree. They are a fantastic way to start your research. And more companies, more clients should do that. Quite often, though, when I'm working with a client, you get some pushback where they don't want to do customer interviews or surveys, and it's exactly for the reasons you mentioned. It takes a little bit more time to set up an interview, and then you have to schedule them, you have to run them, then you have to analyze the call afterwards, and it can add a couple of weeks if you really want to do enough interviews. And more often than not, a lot of clients or campaigns just don't have that time to hang around, or the client doesn't want to spend the extra to do it. So if you need to do some proper voice of customer research quickly, that's when you can turn to what's already available online. And that's what it is, voice of customer. Like interviews and surveys are great. You can ask people questions on the fly, and you can really dig into things. But in lieu of that, if you can't do that, my favorite place to turn to is Reddit. And the reason being is because there on forums, any forum, like also like social media comments and stuff, or Amazon reviews or G2, whatever, you're just going to get real honest reviews from real people, and they're having real conversations. Like whereas Amazon and that is just a standalone review, Reddit's great because it's conversations, and you're going to find for almost any market, any industry, any product, you'd probably find a subreddit thread, subreddit community with hundreds or maybe thousands of people actively having discussions around the market problems on the shortcomings, the things that they wish existed, the things they're complaining about, the things they're struggling with. They're going to be talking about these very important things like their pains, their struggles, their challenges, their objections, their hesitations, their fears, their triggers, their desires, what they really want to see from the products, or, what they wish such and such a company would create or somebody else would come into the market and offer. And it's real people, real conversations, real language, raw and gritty and honest, and you just get to the core emotions, which is tied right back to that buyer psychology, and that's why it's great. Reddit is just a gold mine for that stuff.
So basically, it's in the field of social media, listening, and then you just listen to other people's conversations which are quite unfiltered and raw, it seems, on Reddit.
Oh yeah, Reddit, they're ruthless on that. I don't know if you've ever, if you tried to get active on Reddit, they don't roll out the red carpet for newcomers. If people come in,
which is perfect,
and post something they don't like they're tribal in their yeah.
So how would you go about it if you were a career coach helping people, and just a random example, promote from middle management to senior management, upper management, from a director, or from a senior manager to a director or VP level? I don't know. If I was helping people with a specific problem like that, how would I go about, just as an example, and everyone listening can kind of mirror probably the logic to their own fields, but how would you go about it? Now, I know I coach these people. I want to coach these people. I want to speak to them in an authentic, relevant way. I want to understand how they think, what they need. What do I do first?
So just to clarify, that use case, no, it helps to have a working example if we're going to talk this through. So when you're considering those people that you want to help, when you're considering those people, it's probably going to start with a conversation first with that person, with a prospect maybe. And you're going to try and just basically draw up a list of the questions that they might have, just based on gut feeling, before you really do any deep research, just based on your prior knowledge of the market and some Googling and some looking around, poking around on competitor sites and things like that. You're going to come up with a list of keywords, phrases, and questions around the topic, and ideally just trying to think of just some starting points, and ideally you throw down a list of as many as you can, just brainstorm as much as you can, and that's your starting point. And then when you have these keywords and questions, then that's when I go to Reddit, and you just you try and find the most relevant communities first. So for that example, would it be looking, say it again?
Career development, or
it's like business coaching you're saying?
No, it's like career coaching. Imagine a coach that helps you promote within a big company, and you want to go from middle management to let's say you want to promote to a VP level from a
director
senior
level.
manager or director level. And that's my sweet spot of how I'm helping people in the fashion industry, in the sporting goods industry. I help people, make this move, these career moves. And I coach and guide them on that. Or that's what I want to do, let's assume.
Okay. So in Reddit, you might find there is a subreddit community for careers, career development, maybe something around the C-suite, people...
Leadership.
Leadership, yeah, I'm sure there's one for that. And then within those communities, if you start plugging in just your basic keywords and phrases and questions, you'll find all the
threads,
the conversations that have been happening around these topics. And that's then you go in, and this is the kind of caveat of using Reddit in this way. It is somewhat manual and can be time consuming. You kind of just got to get into the weeds of it and trawl through, looking through these conversations, loading up on your coffee and your music, and just you got to go through and just you're basically trying to harvest Reddit for good ideas. It doesn't have to be. Some people do this kind of thing and they're trying to look for the perfect headline buried in a conversation. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. You're just at this point just trying to pick out good ideas and angles and things that people are talking about. And the way I organize it then is I'm a spreadsheet nerd. I've got this absolute behemoth to call it a spreadsheet is maybe underplaying it. It's there must be 10 different spreadsheets, and each one has got its own function, It's all in one system.
Sweet.
I've been looking at it. It's kind of like this.
You should sell that.
It's like the bones of an app or something that I would like maybe to polish up, package up in something, even like a Notion document or something, database. But right now it's just Google Sheets. And the main thing is like this repository really for what I collect from Reddit or interviews or surveys. And the way it's split up is just two sides. On one side, two sides, and each side has 2 columns, so 4 columns total. The first side is what I call the prison, and that has column 1, which is pain points, and column 2, objections. So these are the pains, like people saying, oh, I've been stuck in my job for 10 years, I really want a promotion, I keep getting overlooked, whatever. That's maybe a pain point, somebody's saying something like that. The objection is maybe I don't want to put in the extra time to upskill, or I can't afford these extra training courses on the side or something. So it's like the pain that they have and the objection or the roadblock that's holding them back from making that transformation. So that's the pain, the objection, that's under the prison. On the other side is paradise, where they want to go. And on that side, it's the benefits, the things that they want, the things that they desire. And the last column then is the dream outcome. It's really just the dimensionalized benefit, the bigger thing on the side or the far side of that benefit. So there are the 4 columns in prison and paradise, and I'm just going through Reddit, do the same for the interviews and surveys, and I just collect these little ideas and things that people are saying and just drop them into these columns. And I could spend, for like, let's say it's a landing page, or I'm doing website copy. I'm doing a full website. It's a rebrand. It involves positioning, new voice, everything. They're starting from a clean slate. I could spend, a couple of days in Reddit. Not like 8-hour days, but, like little stints, a couple of hours, take a break, do something else. Then the next day, a couple more hours. And then I'll populate this repository enough that I'll have really good information then that this is going to be leading my messaging. And the thing one tip to really do when you're going through Reddit is look for the most emotional language, the most emotional conversation where people are getting really angry or really they're swearing and they're really letting the raw
the big
filter
triggers.
Stuff come out.
The
big and they're really talking about the pains and the triggers, the fears. And you can feel it just reading it. You can feel the real emotion, and you might pull in like. In the pain column, after a couple of days, you might have 30 or 40 different little snippets. Might be a sentence here from one person, it might be a paragraph from one person. You might have 20, 30 snippets, but when you get to the end and you start to analyze, you'll realize it boils down, and you'll be familiar with doing this from interviews. It'll boil down and bucket. You can drop it into maybe 3 or 4 main buckets, main pains. Same for the objections. You might have 20 snippets of conversations, voice customer, but it'll really boil down to like 3 or 4 objections.
ChatGPT summarize these 40 objections.
Yeah, that's right. ChatGPT is good at this point because then it helps you. You've got this overwhelming spreadsheet. Then ChatGPT or Claude or something can come in and really help you with the organization of it. Just that you brought ChatGPT up. Here's why I do this. Here's why I use Reddit. And why people should use things like Reddit and interviews and surveys. There's a very famous copywriter. He's actually passed away now. Clayton Makepeace. He's like one of the legends of copywriting. And you'll be familiar with the basic concept of copywriting, where you don't talk about features, you talk about benefits. Okay, that's basic. That's kind of 101 stuff. ChatGPT is very good at doing that. You just throw some information in, about your business and that. Say, give me some features and benefits. It can do that. It's base level. It's it's the baseline. Clayton Makepeace devised this concept where you would go further than just feature and benefit. He created something. I think it's called like the 5-step feature and benefit framework, or 5-step feature and benefit exercise.
How do you spell his name?
Clayton.
Clayton. Clayton.
That's him, yeah. Makepeace.
Okay. Copywriting.
I can write it for you.
Yeah. Taking it out. We can share it underneath the episode later.
I've heard of Clayton Makepeace a lot, but I really became aware of this 5-step feature and benefit exercise more recently. Just a while back, I did a supplement copy bootcamp with another copywriter, Kim Krauss-Schwam. It was very much focused on writing for the supplement industry and like email marketing and stuff. But she brought this up because she uses it. I think Kim has got a very big course actually on research. I haven't done it, but this is an element that she has borrowed from Clayton, and she taught us this. And the nutshell of how it works is basically you go through the 5 steps by just asking why. Why does that matter? You just keep asking why does that matter, and you keep digging deeper and deeper. So let's we take the example of like Revolut, like a fintech bank feature. You can get like 10 different accounts in your app. That's the feature. Why does that matter? So you can segment, there's my income, there's my profit, there's my tax, there's my operating expenses. Okay? Why does that matter? So you go to the next level. Why does that matter? Because it gives you clarity over your money and you more control over it. And everything's very organized. Okay, that's the benefit. Most people would stop at that point. That it's just clarity and organization. But by continuing to ask, why does that matter?
What's the ripple effect of?
You get what they refer to as like the dimensionalized benefit. So you ask, why does that matter again? So you're like, well, why does it matter to have things organized and clear and in little neat accounts and boxes? Well, it just makes me more prepared for tax season or able to cover my costs, whatever. And I'm not worried. I'm just like I can relax and I just feel more confident about my money. On that point, you're starting to then get into the emotions of it. So then you ask again, so why does that matter? Why does that matter to feel relaxed about your money? It's just, you just feel relief. You just feel calm and in control. You feel relief. So you go through the 5 steps by just digging and asking why does that matter, and you dimensionalize the benefit and you get to the emotion that's associated with it. So to bring it right back to Reddit, whereas ChatGPT is good at the feature benefit stuff, it doesn't dig far enough to get to the dimensionalized benefit. To get that, you really need to get talking to real people through interviews, through surveys, or through digging around in the real conversations that they're having in places like Reddit. And so that's why I do it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So I understand, you go there, you look for pains, you look for objections, you look for, wishes, you look for the bigger dream, the ripple effect of that wish coming true, and you make notes, you let it summarize, you use that for copy. Now, if I'm niched down a lot, does that still apply? Like, can I find very specific people? Because I can find a leadership community where people talk about leadership who may be in completely different types of industries, company sizes, positions. So it will take a long time until I find here's a director who wants to go to VP. So it's where's the limitations potentially, and what is it good for and great for, and where is it maybe where you do need to go into those interviews or one-on-ones?
Yeah, I mean it's definitely not a magic bullet for every industry, and you will run into situations like you're describing where it's just that I say it's a gold mine in many ways. There's places you go to and it's like you're very quickly scraping the bottom, and there's just not enough there. And in that case, first and foremost, you have to ask yourself, are you in a niche? Have you went too niche? Is your business so niche that you're just in a really small area that there's not going to be a lot of potential to turn this into a business that you can scale, that there's a big market for? If not, if it's just simply that there's not enough people talking about it, then you got to find them some other way, and then through your network, through social networking, and eventually hopefully getting on to calls. But that can be a bit of a problem. You and I have talked before about validating an offer quickly, and you can do that maybe by creating an offer, running some paid ads on like Meta, and getting the quick data feedback that way to see, hey, you're just throwing this offer out. If there's good copy, a good hook, it's a good ad, and it leads to a sales page, maybe like a wait list or something. You haven't even built the product yet. Yeah. Maybe that's a way you can test the waters and validate an offer. And if you come up short, maybe you've got your answer, and from that, that could be another workaround if you can't get it on Reddit or you can't get interviews. You just be like, all right, I'm just going to run some ads, see if I can validate this quickly.
Okay, so essentially, it might work, it might not work, depending on just how much specified forums and contents and threads you find.
Yeah,
and I have to make a comment because you mentioned you may just be too niche down, and that whilst that could potentially happen, what we always preach, that's why I need to say this,
sure.
And it's okay, it's that we always tell people to niche down at least 3, 4, or 5 times to go super niche in the beginning, because it then allows you, okay, I know exactly, I can find the exact Facebook group where these people are. I can filter the exact profile on LinkedIn. I can, find these people in my network very directly. I can ask someone, hey, do you know someone who is this?
It's just, I guess, from there are 2 reasons behind it. And one is that, generally always there are a lot of different players on the market, right? I don't like the word competitors, but there are different players, right, who are playing in the same field. So it is actually much easier to go and take over a very narrow, resegmented part of the market if you don't have initial budget to invest, right? Because if you really want to take a very broad market head on, you need to have almost double the marketing money of the biggest player on the market, because otherwise there is no way you can win there, right? Yeah. So it's kind of it's much easier to go into very narrow and niche segment, right, and win there organically. So that is kind of one reason. The other reason is that if you sufficiently niche down, especially on people that you have inside your network, it's much easier to get access to them. Right, so it's don't niche down to people that you have 1 or 2 people in your network, because you won't be able to get the sufficient amount of interviews or understand, how they function and what they need. But if you have sufficient amount of people in your network, you can create sales very quick to validate your business idea initially.
It's the difference of being a solopreneur, just starting out without investment, in a passion profession, which is kind of our audience. It's the coaches, it's creatives who love what they do in one kind of way. It's craftsmanship, it's mindfulness professional. It's something meaningful, something where your passion is, and you want to monetize that, get your 100K profit stream going, and live a flexible, good lifestyle doing something you love. And in that scenario, you only need 100K profit per year. If you have a tech vision of a €1 billion company, definitely a very, very, very tight niche might be too small, but it will. I just want to make this for people, not that they now, after the episode, they're okay, I'm going to go broad, don't go broad, people, please, but understand, there may be a limitation, on Reddit on what you can find if you go too specific. But in any case, people want to get a promotion. If I want to spend my energy and service on a specific subsegment of these people, others talking about wanting a promotion in more or less plus minus 3-4 positions up and down, even in different industries, it will give you a very good indication, I think, a very good starting point. Very quickly seeing their pains, it's likely similar. There will be different angles,
But I think that's what I'm taking from Chris here as well. It's in a way, pay attention to the potential red flag. If you are looking for conversations and there are none, it might be that the problem that you're trying to solve is not a painful enough problem for people to talk about it on Reddit. So pay attention to this. It's not to the extent that's oh no, I'm just gonna disregard it, but maybe do your due diligence and really dig and understanding, is it an actual problem I'm trying to solve here, or I'm just delusional?
Yeah, and another step that you should follow, after you're doing this kind of voice of customer research, is you're also going to do, it's more important really, if you're say working with an e-commerce store or a startup or something, you're going to do competitor analysis, and you're going to look at other websites from similar companies. You're going to go into, say, Meta, Facebook ads library, see what ads are running. You can plug in the keywords and see, are there other people running ads for the thing I want to do? And if there are, and if especially let's say you find ads that are running, for 3 months or 6 months or a year, what does that tell you? If somebody's running ads for a year,
they're making money.
They're making money. The ads are working. Okay, and that means that kind of gives you that validation. It's okay, there must be a market here. This guy is doing it. He's running ads for a year on this, so you're getting a good sign there. Competitor analysis in terms of checking other websites doesn't really matter so much if you're a service-based solopreneur. You're a new freelance copywriter, or graphic designer, or web developer, or something like that. But to your point, I agree that it does help in the beginning to go niche down, especially because there are so many freelancers nowadays. And if you're trying to build your personal brand and join in LinkedIn and you're just calling yourself a copywriter, you're joining 50,000 other copywriters. And what makes you different, you know? And I've seen somewhat of a shift over the last year where a lot of people are even moving away from the title of copywriter. You know, there's a lot of people moving towards email marketer. So they're more than a copywriter. They're doing extra things, you know. We can talk a bit more about email in a minute, but they're adding extra skills onto their stack. They're not just a writer. There's another great example of a guy, it was two guys, have a company called Fletch, PMM, Fletch Product Marketing Management, I think that's what it means. But they're calling themselves product marketing consultants. But in its essence, it's still a lot of copywriting and positioning and buyer psychology and research and mapping out sales pages. But these guys only do home pages for SaaS companies, nothing else. That's it. They made that their niche. Home pages for early stage B2B SaaS companies, super niche. And they are killing it. Like I've talked with one guy, Anthony, he's very much focused on building his personal brand. Like he's got like 50,000 followers on LinkedIn. He does a lot of podcasts and speaking events. I've been chatting with him and he told me, you know, like on their website, they charge $7,500 for one homepage. And he says, because they went so niche and built their brand around being the guys for that, they get like 10 or 20 leads per month, you know, like, so like they're killing
because
it.
it's very clear what they're standing for.
It's super clear, super niche. They don't do anything else. And so anybody who's in the marketing sphere, when they need a homepage, they instantly think of these guys. It's like, oh, they're the guys for that, you know? And that if you can position yourself in that way, you become like a category of one. You become the person for that thing.
Nice.
You know, and like we said earlier, it doesn't require a massive audience to make a good lifestyle and a good income.
Awesome. I wanted to follow up on something because so for me it's kind of also important, right? Because just thinking about a lot of our clients who come from the corporate background, and I had this issue definitely as well when writing my copy. This trying to be very politically correct, like they teach you to write emails in the corporate environment, you know, like but there is no personality and the language is very standard and profesh.
Right.
So in a way, you know, like when you're doing this social media listening, right, or doing your research on Reddit or talking to the customers in the interviews. So for me, it's kind of like an important point because I always tell people, listen to the language, like to the exact words and expressions, because when you write your copy, when you're like making an offer to people, you need to speak in their language. So right. what's your take on it? Like how much of it do you take into consideration when you are writing the copy?
Quite a bit. Like you know, after I do that whole thing with Reddit and collect the language and analyze it, and that becomes the basis for when I'm writing, again, let's say like a landing page. I will like go through a few more steps in my massive spreadsheet thing. I'll basically, the thing I was talking about with the 5 steps, features and benefit, I can kind of do the feature and benefit thing myself. But then I'll rely on that language, that voice of customer, and that emotional language that I've gathered up to really inform, you know, why, answer the questions, why does that matter? Why does that matter? And really get to the core emotions. And then I will literally copy and paste the best, ideas and, themes and language into my Google Doc as I wireframe out a sales page. So when I go to write headlines or the body text or lay out the product features and benefits, it's very much led by actual language from the customers. I'm using their language. I'll polish it up, of course. You snip words here and there, and you'll change things around, but it retains at least 60% of that the core language that the market actually uses, which is so much more relatable. When somebody reads something that's in the language that's relatable to them that they use, that again builds that KLT.
That's what I say all the time.
Yeah, because otherwise the alternative is ChatGPT spits out a load of stuff like about dynamic, innovative solutions in this revolutionary era and stuff. And you're like, people don't talk
The
like
profound
this.
experience.
In this digital landscape. You know?
Exactly.
All right, we need to move forward because we've now covered basically what is copywriting, and we now went into stages of awareness a little bit. You know that you need to understand. You know, there's funnels, there's a mix of content, and then there's research where you can talk to people, as we talk in other episodes. But then also there is Reddit, which you can dive into and understand. More about from you said these 4 elements of pain, of objections, of like desires, and then of like the ultimate dream behind the desires, kind of thing.
From prison to paradise.
From prison to paradise,
paradise.
thank you. And to really use that, and 60% of the actual words used in that research to inform copywriting on your website, on your emails, on whatever it is, your posts. And then this is kind of the foundation. Now I understood how my customer thinks and feels. I know that there's different stages of awareness, and I know in general what is copywriting all about. Now comes, okay, there's different types of copywriting still. I can apply this in different ways. I can apply this in, selling. I want to really sell and make direct response copywriting. I want to now apply this to building a personal brand and an audience. I want to apply this to short form. I want to apply this to long form content. Like, what are some of the, maybe just like to try to keep this a bit shorter, like this element, like what are the key differences between selling, personal branding, short form, long form? And then I would just love to like dive a little bit after that to wrap up this section into LinkedIn and email, which is your specialty.
Okay. So like the quick answer, like the 2 sides were like branding and direct response. Branding is building that brand awareness and getting people to know who you are. Maybe on websites you'll have more like snappy, memorable copy. Like
keep going. Just keep going.
For example, brands like Coca-Cola and Apple and stuff, they got like a very well-known brand identity for their snappy slogans and that. Like that's very much the branding side. Over on the other side, direct response. It's the kind of traditional old-style sale, hard sales. You'll see in ads and direct mail and stuff, and it still exists today in email marketing, where people are doing like a much more harder, buy now, 3 days left, this kind of harder push on the sales. So in personal branding on social media, you can use both elements, but it's best to try and find like a blend of them, not go too hard on either side. Yes, you have a business, you have to sell, but like you got to do it in a way that doesn't get people's backs up. You got to build that trust. You got to get them to like you, and you got to have that mix of stories and entertainment and teaching all together. People say edutainment. It's education and entertainment together. And when you get that nice balance going, when it comes time to make a push, like a more direct response, a push for sales, people are more open to it.
Gotcha. So finding really this balance between the 2 things, like I guess you use the pains and the objections. When you do the direct selling, you also paint them a picture of if they buy from you, like the ultimate desire, like to tap into these emotions.
Exactly.
Emotional selling.
Yeah, you're selling that transformation. You're painting that, as you said, painting that picture. This is where you are now, but this is what it could be like. And when you have this, then your life's going to be so much easier. You're going to worry less or stress less. You're going to have more time. You're going to have more freedom. Whatever depend on what you're selling, of course. But that's it. You're basically painting that picture, and you're inviting them to come along. Like one of a very simple but effective framework is BAB, before, after, bridge. So you just like one line, just like here's where you are now, before the prison. Here's what it could be like after, the paradise, and then the bridge is the invite.
Me.
Yeah, and me. Basically, yeah. Our product, our solution, our offer is the vehicle that will take you from A to B.
Okay, and then for branding, like also this what did you say?
Edutainment or infotainment or edutainment, some people call it, yeah.
So really like using what people are suffering from, what they want, but then rather than positioning an immediate sale call to action, you rather use fun ways or memes or whatever to take these elements and just put them out there, and people resonate. People have a quick like aha moment, or they agree to something, and it's more like starting to trust you a bit more because you have a similar thinking as they are based on you having done the research, what they think, and now you put it in a meme or something.
Yeah, I mean, So some people, like, to go back to what we touched on at the start, like some people get in with the wrong misconception that copywriting is creative writing or storytelling, and they think just because they were good at school they can do it, which is untrue. It's a good baseline requirement to like writing. that should be like the minimum requirement. Awesome. But you can't ignore all the mechanics underneath that we've talked about, buyer psychology, stages of awareness, the research, the voice of customer, all of this underneath is what makes the stuff on top, the creative writing, the storytelling, makes the messaging actually work. And there's a lot of people pushing the education, pushing the sales stuff, but one of the best ways to find the balance is through storytelling. And just like you can suck people in much quicker on a social media post or an email by opening with a story. And of course, it has to be something relevant to them. And this is where you're going to consider all your research on these emotions and that and pull them into your world, but in a way that they can relate to. And it then naturally leads into your sale.
Okay. So having touched on, selling and, how that's different versus more the audience building, branding, and, it's always connected, but, there's different highlights that you're playing, different focuses of different posts or emails. What is the difference of short form and long form content? What are some examples of short form, and what are the key differences of how to think about copywriting in a short form environment versus a long form environment?
Sure, good question. So in long form, obviously you've got a lot more words to play with, and you can do a lot more in the terms of if you're dealing with somebody maybe who's higher up on the funnel, or like, the stages of awareness, again, they're going to require much more convincing to come right down to be ready to buy. In direct response, you'll see very, very long sales pages, your huge funnels, and like they could take you 15 or 20 minutes to read every word. But that's because they're trying to take people all the way, almost from the entire journey. And in short form, obviously, you might only have 150 or 200 words in an email or a LinkedIn post. So it's much harder to do that. You're really going to be just focusing on one thing, one step at a time. Copywriting's all, it's very much about good word economy. Every word has to own its place. Every line has to own its place. There's no fluff. It's Joe Sugarman. He's famous for saying, the job of copywriting on an ad or a sales page, wherever the first thing, all these elements together, your images, your headline, everything, the main job is to get you to read the first line. And then the first line's job is to get you to read the second line, and so on and so forth. And it creates this slippery slide effect, is what he calls it. And that's what you're trying to do, especially in something like a LinkedIn post or an email. It's just you're trying to hook attention with the first line, and then you kind of keep that attention, stir it up more, and just get them to just come into the post, the first 3, 4, 5 lines. And once they've got 20, 30% in, they're committed enough. They're going to finish an email, or they're going to finish a social media post. So it's a little bit, in some ways, easier short form, and you can obviously knock it out quicker. And you can ship ideas quickly. You can quickly write a lot of social media posts or emails and send them out, and you can get the feedback very quickly on that. With email, open rates or click rates or conversions, and not conversions, just the click rates true to your sales page. And you'll quickly find out if your ideas are working or not on short form stuff. Long form stuff like the big sales page or landing pages for tech companies, whatever. It's a bigger project, takes several weeks, requires a lot more research, like we're talking about, all the voice of customer stuff. It's more important to do, deeper levels of that. And
I want to highlight this, that Chris said for experienced people, it takes 7 weeks to build a sales page or, landing page.
Did I say that?
Several weeks, you said.
Several weeks, because there's not this thing of, I quickly whip up something that's just like a website and that's going to work. Like, you need to do the research. You need to talk to real people. You need to understand, is it really something painful? Is it really important to them? How do they want? If you don't do that and you just put something, you may be able to put something together with AI probably in 10 minutes or something, but you will have to change it a million times down the line over time, and you'll invest so much time and money if you just go the quick route in the beginning for no results, actually.
It's in a way, there are no shortcuts. And if we're talking about
Yes.
copywriting being sales in print or sales in general, it's like literally, I think, like 70-80% research and 20-30% of the rest, you know.
For sure. And like when you're going to invest in something like a big sales page or an entire website, you don't want to have to change it again next month, you know. It's okay for your brand to evolve, the voice to evolve, the message, maybe the position, maybe new features or a new offer. That's okay. That's natural. Your brand and business will evolve over time, but it's much easier to evolve that on like from 1 week's social media post to the next than it is to redo an entire website. So yeah, you definitely have to get all the research right, and long form has to be very well considered. It's a much bigger project, but that just because you got more words doesn't mean you can fill it up with fluff from ChatGPT. You still need to do the research. You still need to have that word economy in mind, that every line owns its place.
And I think it's so important, I think, for the mindset switch of a lot of people, because like usually how it happens, especially when people come from the corporate background, they come out and they're like, oh, I just need like a website that represents me. And they love to work on like, oh, my tone of voice, like the colors that represent me, like something, right? But it's kind of like, it's really like getting in your head that you need to like flip it around, because like that's the customer now in the center, like, and that is important to capture, right? So like your website is essentially not about you at all. So yes, of course, there are elements of personal brand, but for whom are you building the personal brand, right? You need to speak their language, and you need to like reflect on your website or your sales page, whatever that is, the voice of the customer, right? Because it's kind of like you're wrapping your own story, but in a way that is relevant to the customer, and they can really relate and connect to that.
Absolutely. Yeah, totally agree. I mean, even on like your about page, you know,
it's not really about you, right?
Exactly. It's not about you. Like, it's about them. Even like your mission or your origin story or your core values, they all have to be customer facing. You know, they have to be relevant to people. You can't be just banging on about yourself, because nobody gives a shit, really. Like they just want to know.
Thank you for saying this.
What's in it for me? That's all they want to see, and that goes for any bit of copywriting, especially and it's especially important because of how competitive it is online today. If you want to stand off, you want to get people to stop the scroll and read your post or open your email, immediately you have to show people, you know, answer that question: what's in it for me? Why should I waste my time reading this? You know, so it has to be relevant to them.
Awesome.
Cool. So I think we different types of copywriting, right? Selling, you know, like has different focuses versus building brand. It's about the mix. There's short form, there's long form. Short form, you can run home one specific element of your, you know, one stage of awareness, one element of what you want to bring across. We have 200, 300, 500, whatever characters. And then there's long form content, the whole sales page, for example, where you can theoretically actually cover multiple stages of awareness and bring them throughout the entire journey in one big piece of content. Needs a lot more consideration, takes a lot longer. Like, it's a bigger investment, so do it right. Otherwise, you do bigger investment multiple times. Now, your specialty, the last point before we wrap up, go into the wrap up and final tips section, is, you know, you're really specialized. Like, you do copywriting in general, but you are definitely specialized on LinkedIn as well as part of that, and you also specialize in email marketing. So when you think of LinkedIn, what is something that, you know, if just maybe the top pointers, like if I'm someone who's like, okay, I want to start copywriting on LinkedIn more regularly, I want to build my brand there, I want to, you know, establish my expertise there, that's where my audience sits. Like, what are some of the most important things for doing good copywriting on LinkedIn, if you had like some top things that come to mind?
Okay. I think number one, firstly, is focusing on headlines. Just generally, if whatever field of copywriting you go into, whether it's branding or direct response, whether it's web pages or websites or sales pages or emails or ads, headlines are the most important thing to
Hooks.
get really good. They're now more commonly known as hooks on LinkedIn, and there's a lot of people selling hook courses, you know, but it's essentially headlines, you know. But like, the job of a headline is to hook attention. And if you invested, you know, let's say you did 10 hours of copywriting studying every week, or 5 hours, 1 hour every day, every morning you sat down, you read some copywriting books, you watch some copywriting videos on YouTube, you made some notes about what you learn. If you invested like 50% of that time purely on mastering hooks or headlines, that would be time well spent, because that's the most important thing. If you can't hook attention with your first line, then who's going to read the next line?
Nice.
And on LinkedIn, it's again, like to rehash or repeat a point I made there before, there's just so much competition. People are just scrolling like this. You've only got like a split second to stop. And if you don't have a name that has built up that authority, that KLT, that you're now seen as a thought leader or influencer, people aren't going to just stop for your name. So it needs to be, your headline has to really stand out.
How do I do that?
Well, that's where your research comes in. you have to have headlines that punch straight to the heart of people's very,
the most emotional bits from Reddit that you found.
Not just it has not only just emotion, but also just the relevance. Again, the awareness. The awareness of where is my prospect right now in their journey. What's going on in their life? How can I enter the conversation in their head and talk to the problems that they're dealing with, and bust the objections that are holding them back, and how can I speak to their desires, and how can I offer them that dream outcome? How can I offer this vehicle to take them away from their problems and into the dream state and what that they want? And so getting very good at headlines, will
condensing all of that into one short.
Yeah, it's not easy. It's an art. It's really it's an art, and it just comes from reps and practice. And that's again, the beauty of social media. You can ship ideas quickly, and you should. If you only post them once a week or once a month, you're not getting the opportunity to get that data feedback loop and really understand and learn from what's working and what's not.
How often do I have to post on LinkedIn?
More the better. Not only
more than once a day.
Some people say that can be self-defeating, really. I think it's like the algorithm, the mighty gods that run that we're all, we have to bow down to the algorithm, and it can change. You never know what it's going to do, but to give yourself the best chance, I guess, of getting bumped up with the algorithm or however it works, just post them more regularly, or just a regular, consistent schedule. So you can start out with something that's manageable and sustainable. If for some people that might be twice a week. I'll post on a Monday and I'll post on a Thursday, and I'll keep that going. And when I'm into that habit, maybe I'll put in a third post somewhere. Other people might just start with more because they feel they can do more. They have more time. Maybe they're going to post 3 times or 5 times a week. And some people go gung-ho. They post every day, even the weekends. Some people post twice a day. Those people tend to have a lot more time and less children. and they also tend to maybe have like a virtual assistant. Maybe
a system.
Maybe they've got systems with, maybe they're using bots for like commenting.
I think that will be another episode where we dive into, now we start to understand what to talk about in terms of copy and like what to consider, what frameworks, but then what's an implementable system to actually manage this practically on an everyday basis that's efficient. I think that's a whole nother episode.
You're pulling back the curtain, behind the robots and stuff. What's really going on?
Cool. Is there anything you want to add to the LinkedIn element?
No, not really. I think, maybe I will leave it for later, for the latest part, because I have 2 questions I want to ask.
Okay, email. So it's, first of all, tell me, what is email dead?
Absolutely not.
Absolutely not. Thank you. Because I personally do not read, and I read these people talking about email being dead, and I personally, I almost never check my emails.
They're just really good with their hooks,
Yeah.
But then we wrote for a client some emails, and then actually his audience, they only look emails. And then there's some people, our clients, who tell us, please only write me via email. And people operate still a lot on email as well. And so how's email in general? And then, we talk about creating your first welcome sequences from, grabbing people awareness of you exist. Here's something relevant for free. Now you're in my system. I want to sell you the €50, €100, whatever kind of thing now. How to think about welcome sequences versus now it's just a lot of people in my newsletter. I just want to nurture them on an ongoing basis.
Yeah. Well, it's far from dead for a start. In fact, there's been somewhat of a
I was hoping for that.
There's somewhat of a revolution actually going on over the last year or 2 years, where email, they were saying email newsletters were dead a few years ago, but the last year or two, it's like this whole revival, and everybody's launching an email newsletter. And even there's that company, I don't know if you heard of them, Beehive.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so I think they got funding and everything. Like, it's really taken off. And the reason being is because social media's got so competitive, and you're dealing with things like the algorithm, and it's hard to stand out. It's hard to always get the reach and the engagement you want from your audience. Whereas with email, you have a direct line to your most loyal subscribers. People won't just give you their email address for nothing. Typically, they'll join for something free, like a lead magnet. But once they're on there, they've given you permission to email them. And that's not nothing for a lot of people. If they want to unsubscribe immediately, they will. But otherwise, they're on there. And now you're in a one-on-one conversation with them. And for any business owner, especially somebody like a freelance copywriter, that's a very smart idea to try and deplatform from your social media following onto your email newsletter. And even if you get 10% of your following, so some people probably going to have a small LinkedIn or Twitter, 2,000-3,000 people maybe, but if they could even get a few hundred, 500 maybe onto their email newsletter, that's enough to start really nurturing relationships with the most loyal fans and followers, the people that are really on the same level as you, your tribe, and you can start to build that, that unity and that community and that trust with a small group of people. So when you start making offers, like even low ticket offers, those people are the ones that are going to buy first. A good example is there's a good writer to follow, for anybody to follow on LinkedIn, an English guy, Kieran Drew. And Kieran was a dentist 3 years ago, burnt out, didn't like it, quit, didn't know anything about copywriting, but started picking up some books, started to read, started to tweet what he was learning, documented his learnings. And he did this for a while, but he couldn't get any clients. But he kept tweeting, and he got a following, a lot, like thousands, and then 10,000, and then 20,000 people around what he was sharing about copywriting, even though he had never worked as a copywriter. And he built up his following for a couple of years, and he now has a newsletter of about 20 or maybe 30,000 people on his newsletter. And he's launched courses, and he now makes about $500,000 a year from his courses. And he recently posted, and he had a breakdown of where his sales were coming from. He's very transparent about how his digital products and how he's doing things. And remarkably, like, you would think with over 100,000 people on Twitter and 20, 30,000 people on LinkedIn, these are the people buying, but it wasn't the case. It was like something like 70 or 80% of the sales came directly from his email list. They're the ones that buy.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So email is not dead.
It's not dead. And another point that I touched on earlier, I think, a lot of copywriters are going into email marketing because they can stack their skills. They're not just a writer. They learn email marketing. They get in to manage the back end of a business and, manage these lists and understand where people are in the buyer's journey, who's most engaged and most aware, who just joined the list and needs more education. They become more than a copywriter, they become a strategist, and they become much more valuable to a company. So in my mind, that's one of the best moves, especially in the backdrop of AI. It's one of the best moves for a copywriter to upskill and become, some people are calling it a full stack email marketer. And it's a really good move. It's something that I've been doing more of over the last couple of years.
Nice.
And I see a lot of people making that move. I think it's a very smart move.
Okay, so in the age of AI, going more holistic and strategic about it, rather than just focusing on your skill of writing words, but thinking about it in a holistic ecosystem and expanding that, which may be something to put you apart, like in general, as a copywriter starting out in copywriting. But then in terms of email newsletter, you mentioned as well, it's not that. It's something that it has a much higher potential to sell, actually, versus an audience on social media, directly selling on social media, versus selling one-to-one in email. Now, if I'm just starting out, this is a huge topic, right? If I have time, I will write a welcome sequence. You mentioned earlier, I like that actually three emails for like a €50 price point. Maybe, you said 10, 12 emails for €1,000. So if I do like a 500, it's like 6-7 emails. I don't know. So there's a certain, like, this is a sort of ratio we can take home or we can give to people, like, depending on your pricing between, 0 and 1,000, this is kind of some ways of thinking about how many emails should I put in my welcome sequence. Between the lead magnet and the entry, and then maybe between the entry and the main product.
Yeah, it does. It will vary depending on what you're selling on the back end. Like the typical entry point will be something like a lead magnet, or maybe you're running paid ads with a magnet or a low ticket thing like an ebook at $7 or something, just to get people onto the list. And then once you have them on the list, you'll have this welcome flow to really indoctrinate people. You pull them into your world. You're going to share things about your origin story and what's on offer, and you maybe we're going to share some other free value, free tools and things, and just really build that trust. But you are leading up then to a bigger sale, a bigger offer. That could be a service. Maybe you're trying to get them to buy or hire you for your write in their emails or write in their sales pages, or it could be a digital product, it could be a course or some kind of thing, or maybe joining a community. The length of that welcome flow will vary depending on the price point on that back end offer, for sure. I mean, if you're selling something like 5 or 10 grand or something, maybe it's going to take more than a few emails, But it is. The welcome flow is especially important because those people have just joined your list, so immediately they're going to be very receptive. The open rates are going to be very high on your first few emails, so you really got to hit home run emails just to really pull people in and immediately just like make them see, I'm glad to be here. I'm glad to be on this list.
Build this case. Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to say, like, probably your very first email is the only email they're actually looking forward to receive.
Yeah, it's true.
Hopefully not. I mean. If you give value and if you build the KLT,
like if they just signed up for your email list, they would be really looking forward for that email, like coming into your inbox versus others just coming in kind of on a regular basis where they're not specifically every day looking whether you send something yes or no.
True.
That's true. That's very true. But just to recap, like email is definitely not dead. There's so much work out there. There's a lot of companies hiring for email marketers. So if anybody is looking, newer copywriters are trying to crack in and get their first clients, it's much easier to get in and get a gig writing some emails than it is to try and like approach a client and say, hey, do you want a new website? It's like, because that's a huge project and a huge decision for a business owner. But like if you can show up and just go, hey, I've been doing copy a while, I've got some samples here that I've written, maybe I'll write some emails for you, that it can be a little way to get your foot in the door. And I think to really reiterate a point that I made earlier, like with AI, just on the backdrop, AI is getting better. It's going to consume all content writing jobs, no doubt, in the next year or two, like blog writing jobs, they're just going to dry up. But things like email, when it's paired with the strategy and the list management, and it's much more of a full-rounded job, that's more protected, a little bit more future-proof than just a simple email or a simple content blog writer job is. So, for this reason, I joined like a really good community for email marketing called the Email Dojo, and it's really cool. And there's like 90 or 100 guys in there, very top tier guys working across different industries, and you'll see the way they're talking, and they're talking about the industry trends and that. Like you see how things are shifting, especially with AI. So anybody, my advice, if you're getting into copywriting, stack your skills. Don't just be a writer. Don't just be somebody who's sending words in a Google Doc, because eventually you will be replaced. Think about how you can pair that, whether it's email marketing or whether it's, I'll write sales pages, but I'll also do like video sales pages, and I'll help you record the videos. Or, I do blogs, but I also do the whole SEO strategy. Stack your skills to make yourself much more valuable, more full stack.
I think this is a good point, just even for any industry, not just for a copywriter, but for anyone like getting out there, doing something. We always hear this in interviews. People like ask for not just for this exact thing that you maybe had in mind. I want to coach you, your mindset, but then people want a CV, like for the career progression. People want a CV. People want a mentor who is already a VP. People now maybe you need to stack your skill set or your value system to have also these other features on there, which now an AI cannot just give me one. Like I'm customizing my value stack for my customer in bringing in this expertise that now is a holistic package that makes sense seamlessly.
Exactly. I mean, look, most of my background is actually long form stuff, websites, brand position, and landing pages. It's just more in the last year or two I've done short form stuff like email. But the beauty of that is they go together. If I write the sales page, I become the best person to write the emails, because they're connected. They're part of the funnel. All
right, I'm getting the sign we're running towards the end of the session today. So this was like different types of copy, that we discussed: selling versus branding, short versus long. We talked about LinkedIn briefly. We talked about e-newsletters. So let's wrap up today. Like you said, you had something that you really wanted to get out of today.
Yeah.
Maybe some final tips, some final words.
Yeah, I think because especially towards the end of conversation, we were talking a lot about AI, right? And knowing that a lot of people, especially who are business owners or new entrepreneurs, right? They're not copywriters per se, unless they are really in the copywriting career. So people do want to use AI tools because they feel stuck in writing something. So maybe what's your tip on how you combine, the copywriting or writing skills with using AI? How are you using it to support yourself right now, or what people can do to kind of make their life easier?
Yeah, good question. I mean, all these conversations kind of boil down to the same conclusion whenever I'm in them, and basically people just come to they wrap it up and they just say, AI is a tool, it's not going to do everything. It's a tool. It just really depends on how you use it. So if we've all got AI, but my ma, she's got AI. If I log her on the ChatGPT, does that mean she's going to be able to write copy? No. but if some junior copywriter of Upwork with a few jobs, a few miles under his belt uses AI, he can probably write better copy than my ma. Naturally. But then somebody else with 5 or 10 years experience is going to be able to use AI even better than that guy. So it is just a tool at the end of the day. And it's the power is in the hands of the person using it, really. And their knowledge, the specific knowledge and skill set that they're going to bring to the AI. The way I use it really is just for research and analysis. And I do my own research, then I plug it in and I get AI to help me just segment, organize things, break it down, and then maybe just try and just ask it certain questions based on what I have fed it. I don't rely on what it pulls out of wherever it pulls it from. So I'll provide the materials and then ask it to sort of brainstorm with me, and then I can also use it to come up with frameworks and structures and maybe throw down the bones of an email or of a sales page, and then I'll just kind of iterate with it, and I might walk away from it and paste something into Google Docs, but okay, this is a good starting point of a sales page or an email, but I'm still going to have to do the craftsmanship, polish this up before I send it to a client or post it online,
And Claude or GPT?
Claude, all the way, man.
So you mentioned to me before, some things that you also wanted to give to people, study the craft, develop your skills, network more, be consistent. What's your final words on people starting out to copyright, for copywriting, but also just for your own business, final words of how do you do it well? How do you start well?
I think the base requirement again is just develop the skill. You can't shortcut through things like buyer psychology and brand position. Some people come into this with the idea, maybe they've heard from Andrew Tate or something, that it's a get rich quick scheme and they're going to make 50 grand a month, but they'll get a shock. But the reality of it, you have to get skilled. You can't. There's a very famous or very popular experienced direct response marketer on Facebook called Alan Sultanich. The guy's been in direct response for 20 years. He's an absolute genius. A genius. And everything he puts out on his community is gold. And people should join that community, by the way. Nothing held back. It's gold. And I would bring him up because he had a very relevant post just last week, and he talked about depth over distance. It's more important to go deep on your skill set, and you need to do that first before you will go the distance and reach the goals that you want. He compared it, he had a good analogy for this, the roots of a tree go down, then it goes up. It's never the other way around. So you hear people, it's like, oh, I'm going to make 20, 30 grand a month. You know, I'll get all these clients and I'll just hustle and I'll reach this point. And then I'll get good at copywriting. Then after I get to this point and save a load of money, then I'll take some time off and I'll study and then I'll get good. But it doesn't work that way. So that's number one requirement.
Put in the work.
Put in the work. Get good at the skill set. Number two, when you're talking about your position, your personal brand or niche, or how you stack your skills, whatever it is, make sure it's something that you're going to stick with. It has to be sustainable. It isn't just you're doing it for the skill. It isn't you're just doing it for the money. It has to be something you're going to find, you're passionate about, you're interested in it. You're going to be able to talk about it on social media every day. You're going to be able to work with clients week in, week out in this realm, in this market, in this niche. If you don't have that drive, or it's not sustainable. It's not scalable. You know, they said nobody beats the guy having fun. So if it's fun to you, you will stick with it. If it's not, you're going to drop it. You're going to keep flipping around and going around in circles. So those are the big things. Develop your skill. Make sure it's sustainable, and then it's scalable. And then lastly, just stick with it. You know, just be consistent. Just do the boring work of showing up every day. And you keep showing up every day, building your personal brand, building that trust, building that authority, then you'll get to where you want to be.
Nice. Thank you for this. And it's really this mindset game when you're starting out, right? You don't see the results, but you're anticipating the results, and you need to just keep going. And this consistency will actually give you those results at the end. And just for everyone, like as we're finishing, we're gonna so much information today. We're gonna build a little bit of a cheat sheet from like everything from today, just to have it in a more condensed way for people to consume. I don't know, you mentioned before we talked that you may have some templates or frameworks or whatever. If you have anything, we'll put it below the video on YouTube as well, so people can get access as well.
Yeah, I'll have some goodies, ready.
Nice. And then I'll leave the final word to Olga.
No, I just wanted to say it a couple of times, like, and it's a cut.
It's a cut.
We're done. All right. Thanks very much for having me, guys.
You're welcome.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.